anything from... do you have anything else to add on to the three teams? No more, right? Okay. I'm going to address what Izwan said.
Okay. Who is what?
Izwan Abu Shama.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what?
Alright guys, this is a continuation of the show. We do apologize for the technical difficulties that we encountered earlier, which caused the live stream to be broken. So I hope you guys are still there listening to us. So join this new stream and then, we will continue our discussion from here. So talking about the national team and the inclusion of the three teams that set out and them coming back, let's go on to the next comment, which was left by Izwan earlier. Now, Izwan was saying that our system of playing three defenders at the back would require two fast wing backs. Now, if you look at the game against Lebanon, we played Hafiz Sujat on the left, and on the right we played Farid Hamid. But in the following game against Bahrain, there was actually a switch, and it was quite surprising to see Sundram leave Farid out of the team against Bahrain, and in his place he started Madhu Mohana. So Madhu switched to the right flank, and in the right centre-back position, I think Bennett went over there, and Irfan came into the team as the left centre-back, with Haris slotting into his original position against Lebanon as centre-back. Now, what Izwan mentioned is, the key word here is fast, which means in order to employ such a system, we need to have players that are fast enough, not only marauding forward, but also coming back to defend. Now, Tom, do you think Hafiz, Sujat, and maybe Madhu or Farid, do you think with these players we are good enough to use this system?
First of all, Aaron, the thing is that the Lebanon game and the Bahrain game were only like 4 games apart, or 4 or 5 days apart, and I feel that Sundram should have at least gone for some kind of consistency in having the same lineup or more or less the same system for both games, so that the players are prepared mentally and physically for what's up, in the crucial game, which was a qualifier against Bahrain. So the friendly game against Lebanon should have been a preparation match, so the players would be more or less ready for what was to come. In terms of whether the players are fast enough, I don't know. I mean, I'm not very sure about them. I would say, okay, I mean, give them benefit of doubt. We can feel them. But if they don't perform well, then they have to make way for better players, faster players. Because, when you are playing in that kind of system, you have to be fast, going up and coming back. Otherwise, you leave your defense totally naked, when a counter-attack happens. So it's down to the system, and I think importantly is that Sundram should have maintained the system and the players, the personnel in both the games, or maybe just made minor changes, and not made wholesale swaps and change to the formation. That was a bit uncalled for.
Okay, let's move on to a couple more comments that are coming in before the line was broken. We have Muhammad Iswadi, who's actually saying that our previous coach, Bernd Stanger, already laid out a good blueprint for our team. But what has Sundram done? Or what has Sundram done to the system or changed it? Also, a couple comments here saying that hashtag bring Bernd back. Also, someone, Wong Jiawei here is saying that other than Sundram, who can be the next national coach? But Tom, I want to ask you about this. Would changing the coach now help us? Because I think a lot of people feel that, Sundram plays, the tactics that Sundram plays is quite similar to parking the bus. That's why they always make this joke about Jalan Besar Stadium being a bus interchange. But, I mean, on a more serious note, would changing Sundram now to any coach, do you think this would help us in the short term?
Yeah, talking about bus, we had a joke on our page which says Bus Football Club. Okay, now coming back to serious points, let's look into perspective here. If this was an EPL, Ronald Koeman, Frank de Boer, and what's his name, the guy from West Ham, the guy who got sacked, the Croatian guy, they would look good, compared to what Sundram has. 2 in 21? Okay, let's forget about the Argentina game. That was a hard one. There's no way of winning. So it's still 2 out of 22. It's an atrocious record, I think he should go. He should be magnanimous enough to say, okay, I've done a bad job. I didn't live up to expectations. I have to go. And yeah, I'll talk about who a possible replacement could be down the show. But at the moment, I think he should be brave enough, like what the FAS Facebook page says, a brave display. He should be a brave man. I like him, as a player, he was fantastic. He broke our hearts in '93 in the Malaysia Cup between Kedah and Singapore. He came on to score that crucial goal. Yeah, he's a fantastic player, but as a coach, I don't think he's lived up to expectations. He did fantastically well, not far from where we are now in Jurong FC. Yeah, in the 90s, brought them to the Singapore Cup final as well, losing to Warriors if I'm not wrong. But as the coach of the national team, I think there's much to be desired.
Okay, before we move on back to the comments that we were looking at earlier, this was something that I was having a chat the other day, and someone told me this. So I'm going to share this with you. Perhaps you can tell me your thoughts about whether you agree or disagree with this. But somewhere back in 2012, Zainuddin started this project called Lions 12. I mean, everybody knows Lions 12, right? And that's actually the time where all the best players in the league came together and played in the Malaysian Super League. Now, this person who was sharing it with me was saying, if you look at the time when, at that time, we had quite a decent national team. And fast forward to the present day, the reason why our displays have been so shambolic as of late is not really Bernd Stanger's fault, it's not really Sundram's fault, but it's because of this project that actually took away all the best players. And therefore, right now, there's a big gap because of the Lions 12 project. Do you agree or disagree with this notion?
Aaron, I think the Lions 12 project was a very short-sighted one. I really blame Zainuddin for messing up the whole show. If you look back a bit longer, back in 1998, we launched Goal 2010 project. That was to eventually bring Singapore to the World Cup. But frankly, I would say it will never happen. It's never happened. It will never happen ever. But it was an attempt to raise the standards of football. Yeah. So we had like 10 years to work on qualification, which would have been in 2008 for the 2010 World Cup. So the execution of the project was a bit wrong. So if you're looking at the age group, in 98, these players would have been about 11 or 12 years old who will eventually play in the 2008 qualifying tournament. Yeah, but I think 11 and 12 are a bit too old already. They should have targeted maybe the 5 and 6 year olds. Start from a very young age. You develop them all the way up. But maybe if they had addressed it as Project 2018, 20 years from 98 would have been too long. Yeah, so I think the idea was, okay, aim for the sky, land on the crowd. Yeah, eventually, this should have been the main objective. We should have at least targeted winning the Southeast Asian Games, the Suzuki titles along the way, or the qualification to the Asian Cup. None of this happened. And I blame Zainuddin for coming in and messing up the show, for messing up what was already planned. Things were in the pipeline, things were moving on. Why go back to Malaysia Cup, They kicked us out in 94. I mean, officially, yes, we claim to have left, but they kicked us out, Why go back there? And they actually kicked us twice before, 94 and I think 80-something, 87 or 88. And I mean, ultimately, Singapore football does not include the Malaysia Cup. We are never part of Malaysia Cup. I mean, there are those fans who say, bring back the cup. I think it's rubbish. We can never bring back what is not ours. If anything, that's theft. It's like you're going up to Malaysia to steal what is theirs. Just like how most fans now feel about Albrechts. We are not far away from Albrecht's home ground from where we are now. They have won the last 8 major trophies in Singapore. 2015 Singapore Cup onwards, everything has been theirs. The only thing that any other club has won is last year's league plate, which was out of Albrecht's reach because they already won the League Cup. There was no way they could win the plate, yeah? So my point is, forget about this Lions 12 project or whatever pussycat projects, we have to concentrate on our own league, and that's the way to go. And Zainuddin, if you're listening, I think you were bad. You had no foresight. You didn't know what you're doing. You should have never come into football.
Okay, all right. Let's move on to some of the comments. So there are some names being thrown in by a couple of fans, lah. I mean, I think a lot of people are not really happy seeing Safwan play up front. I personally feel that that's not his best position. I would agree that centre back was his best and probably would be his best. He's decent as maybe a attacking midfielder, like what he did for Melbourne for a couple of games, and then subsequently PDRM. So what people are saying right now is, like WK Live from Hougang is saying, if playing Safwan up front did not yield any goals, why can't Sundram bring in potential talented strikers like Iqbal Hussein and Faris Farhan and let them have a run? How worse can it be? And by the same token, right, there are a couple more names that are being thrown in here by Iswadi, who's saying that we have Shafiq Ghani, we have Sahil Suhaimi, and interestingly, Iqbal Hussein appeared twice. They should be leading the attacking front. You've seen how they played in the league, lah. I would say that, okay, if we talk about Faris Farhan and Iqbal Hussein, I would say that Hougang plays a distinctively different game, or Philip Au goes for a different approach as compared to Sundram, lah. Now, if we were to plonk these players in Sundram's system, how do you think they will fare?
Why Sundram's system? If he has to go, then we should be talking about somebody else's system, I think we should never mention about Sundram as in perpetual coach. He may have to go, and I think he should go. And hello, what WK Lai, right? Was it? Yeah, I think he's a Hougang fan. Yeah, nice to hear his comments. Yes, I coming back to what you asked me earlier about what Sundram said, that he doesn't have enough strikers around. WK Lai has just answered his question. There are players, but he's probably stubborn, not going out to take a look. I wonder whether he sees any S.League games. I mean, judging from what he said in his press conference, it appears that he's never been to any S.League game. He doesn't know what's happening, which is a shame again. Yeah, that answers the question, There are players out there. I think let's maintain their position. If Safwan is a defender, leave him there. Don't move him. Why are you messing around with the system, Their players are playing at the club level. They are comfortable there. I mean, would it make sense, like, we are very familiar with the EPL, right? If Coutinho plays up front one day and then the next day he's in defense, or maybe, Man City bought plenty of defenders in the transfer window and they move one of them up front. Why? I mean, Sundram has to make it simple. Football is a simple game. You have your defenders, you have your strikers, you have your goalkeepers, you have your midfielders. They should remain where they are.
All right. So moving on to another funny comment I saw here. I thought this was funny, so I'll just share it with everyone. What does SBS stand for? Yeah, supposed to be SBS Transit lah, but over here it says Sundram Bus Service. Okay. Muhammad Salihuddin is saying that, well, the problem doesn't lie with just the Lions 12 project. The NFA and the Young Lions playing in the S-League is also a problem. Singapore is depending too much on just one youth development setup and can never go far with this. Tom, do you agree?
Sorry, who was the one with the comment? Salihuddin, you are spot on. You hit the nail on the head. Yes, it's just creating an elite group of players who think that they are good enough to perpetually be there. Just move on as the years and the age groups change, from the under 16s to 18s and so on. They think that they are there forever, which is killing the game. There's no competition. By right, there should be players in the S-League. Okay, let's put it this way. The Young Lions should dissolve. The players should go back to their respective clubs. If they don't have a club, like, maybe they were never in an S-League club, then they should be drafted into various S-League clubs. The Young Lions should never exist. It's a waste of time. It's a waste of funding. So what would a Young Lions catchment area be? Where would they capture their friends? They are actually overlapping the other S-League clubs. So if I'm a Geylang fan, which I'm not, then I would be inclined to support the Young Lions because it's a national project. So a national project cannot be in the National League. Do you see the England under-21s playing in the EPL? No, never in the world. It's only in this part of the world where things have gone very bad. And let's change it for the future.
Okay, I have a comment here from Jay who says that some of the national team players need to be dropped due to various reasons. So to name a few, Daniel Bennett, Zulfami Arifin, Hafiz Sujat. Players need to be switched back to where their original role is. Now, Tom, I'm going to ask your opinion now because I think a lot of people don't agree with the players that Sundram picked. Not only this round, but even for previous games. Let's not throw the net. Let's not cast the net too wide. Let's talk about a few key positions in the team, and let's hear your thoughts about which players you will pick. What I feel is lacking right now, probably the two wing backs, the central attacking midfielder, and the centre forward. Now, these four players, based on what you've seen in the S-League so far, and based on the form, current form, who would you pick as the wing backs, the attacking midfielder, and the centre forward?
That's quite a tough question. If you could answer it, I'll be a national coach. I think I'll go up front with Iqbal Hussein. I think he deserves a chance. The rest, I would have to give it a thought before I answer your question. But, that's the name that comes to my mind first. Iqbal Hussein, I think he's progressed well over the years. He's put in a good show at Hougang, and he deserves a slot in the national team. But coming back a little, to what Jay's comment, right? Let's not talk about dropping players. I think every player should be considered in future, whether they are old or they are ugly or they are fat or they are thin. All these descriptions should never be considered when dropping. Let's keep an open mind, keep them around, give them the proper training that they need. And then from there we can see how we go. You never know. When Liverpool was doing well in the early 2000s, Gary McAllister was 37 years old, and he turned things around that season. They won the Europa League, right? Or the UEFA Cup, yeah. Yeah. So age should never be a consideration. You never know. A player who is old now, but he could put in a fantastic performance along the way.
Tom, I see a very interesting comment here. I would agree with this listener, Bernard Chan. We rely too much on set pieces and we become way too predictable. Now, I'm not sure about you, but from where I was seated yesterday, I saw a tendency of them pumping a long ball to Safwan, and at the slightest touch by the Bahrain players, Safwan flopped to the ground. He was trying to earn, dead ball situations for Singapore. And thereafter, I'm quite disappointed because from the dead ball, we couldn't create anything. Everything just fizzled out. But do you agree that we are, trying too hard to get set pieces and trying to convert from set pieces?
Yeah, I agree wholly with Bernard. We are like Wimbledon, In those days when they used to pump the ball up, hoping John Fashional gets knocked down and get a penalty or another free kick just outside the box. I think that's what's happening. We need to change that thing, if we have a free kick, let's not just pump the ball into the box. Try to do something with it. I mean, I noticed Bahrain last night. They kept the ball very well. They never lost possession so easily. And like what their coach said, when they lost possession, they were there trying to win it back. It was a very, very disciplined performance. It's something that our national team should look at and try to emulate.
Okay, so now there are some comments coming in saying that, we should try to scout for under-23 players, try to get more youth players into the national setup. Now, earlier on, you did mention a good point whereby you disagree with the Young Lions project, the so-called project, and that we should disband the Young Lions and send them back to the clubs. Therefore, there would be a wider pool of young players, and maybe clubs would have better incentive of grooming their own young players because they know that it will not be so-called stolen away by the NFA or by some other project that they think of. But here's something here's some food for thought for us. Now, we did hear somewhere through middle of the season, we did hear this rumor that next season foreigners coming in might have to be under 21 or something like that, or have to be young. Now, wouldn't it be better if, say theoretically Young Lions were disbanded and these players went back to the club? Would it be better for FAS to mandate that you should just play one player or two players that are under a certain age per game, rather than changing the rule so drastically and saying that no, you need to sign a foreigner that's under 22 in the hope that these players might represent us in the future? I mean, it's going back to the foreign talent scheme all over again. Now, don't get me wrong, I do support the foreign talent scheme when it worked for us because it has produced players such as Farah. I won't consider Bennett a foreign talent, but Farah, Itimi Dixon, going further back, Ago Kasmir. These are players that did play their heart out for Singapore. To a certain extent, it did help us for a very short term because right now we are back in the rut. But which one would you go for, or do you have something else that you might want to propose to FES if you had the power?
I'll go back to the early 90s where there were plenty of conditions in your team lineup where you needed X number of players in your squad to be of a certain age. I think we should do that. Maybe, I don't know. I mean, just at the top of my mind, say 4 or 5 players have to be between that particular age group. And then every game you must have at least 1 or 2 of those on the field at all times. This would, guarantee you at least maybe 1 or 2, let's say 2 players, on the field. That means you have, say, 12 clubs. If we meet the target, we have 24 players in that age group who can represent us in the SEA Games to be getting, match playing time, yeah. So I think we should go along with that stand. And the foreigners, right? I find it a bit funny if the FAS says we have to go under 21, under 22, because ultimately we are paying big bucks for them. I mean, why lose 1 slot in the team for a younger player just because you want to convert them to a local eventually? But they might not. I mean, what guarantee is there? And you have that FIFA residency condition now of 5 years, right? So in the past, like when you had Itimi Dixon and you had Farah, it was only 2. I think it began with Chuli. Chuli went through the 5-year residency regulation. So that put him off. And, if a player is even 21, 5 years is 26. Would he still want to be around? So I think if that is what FAS is looking at, it might backfire again on them. I think we should be looking at our local players, give them that playing time that they need. Foreigners should be, kept open, get the best available. Why would you want to bring in a young player who is a talent which is not fully developed, and you don't know what he can do? I'd rather go for, let's say, like looking at the SAF team, they have some good foreigners, something like that of that caliber.
Okay, I'm going to touch on a few comments that came in, and I'm going to read them out to you. Ben Tay says that all of our age groups are doing badly. I hope I can still see our team win SEA Games gold. I'm sure you followed the SEA Games team. Even before they went to SEA Games, they were playing in the AFC Under 23. And again, I'm going to go back to Young Lions. Well, Young Lions started off as a project whereby the concept was if you band a group of players together and let them play football regularly enough, you would eventually get a team of players who would be able to communicate very well on the pitch, and that would hopefully translate into SEA Games gold medals for us. But, well, the last few SEA Games have been quite disappointing for us. Now, this setup that we have, the Garena Young Lions, no doubt it has produced some players that went on to become, I would say, pretty important players for their current S.League clubs. But, okay, let's say if we go to the idea of not having Young Lions, but having clubs produce their own young players. If we go to this kind of concept, or we put this into action, how soon do you think we would be able to get something out of the SEA Games? I know it's tough to answer, but let's just talk about it hypothetically.
The answer is not so soon, man. I don't know whether we can ever win a SEA Games medal in my lifetime. Yeah. We have to make drastic changes. Look at the region. Thailand is much superior. Vietnam is, knocking on their shoulders. The Myanmars or the Burmese are always very good. They always give us a good fight. Indonesians are fighters again. Who else is there? I mean, these are the big four. Malaysia is always our arch rival. We are happy just to beat them, and then eventually lose in the, lose out on the qualification to the semis. As long as we beat Malaysia, that's a gold medal. That's how they look at things, which is sad. I would say yes, we can eventually do it, but it takes time, proper training, good scouts. I know Wenger is doing some kind of project out there where he's scouting for players. He needs to, we need more people like him. He has a good eye for players. Many of his players were actually just picked out from nowhere by him in the past. I think, he can keep on doing it, and we need more scouts, proper coaching for them. And back to the clubs, they have to be more professional. And also the contracts. I've noticed that some clubs are giving 10-month contracts, which is a shame. Which parent would want their kid to have that kind of career? I mean, Aaron, you're working, right? Would you want, to be, this is different, you're a volunteer in this line, but would you want to be working somewhere where you only get 10 months in a year, and the other 2 months you eat grass? Literally, you can go to India and stay on a paddy field, eat grass the whole of the 2 months. So that is what we have to look at. We have to be a bit more matured. These are young players, but don't take advantage of them. Don't think that you can bully them into giving shit contracts, basically. Pardon my French. But we have to be, realistic in terms of if we can bring forward and, help them to groom better.
All right. Another interesting comment that I would like to point out, and maybe let's have your thoughts about this. Sao, Hougang. The main reason why we are winless, Sundram is losing it in the dressing room. Players worry about not being able to sign for any teams the next year, which comes back to your point, having the short contracts. Lots of uncertainty in Singapore football, and that needs to be addressed. Now, I've heard about rumors of, Sundram having some issue in the dressing room. I mean, I don't want to speculate on anything right now, but of course, over here, Sao goes on to say that, or he's implying that there's some form of favoritism in certain teams. He didn't mention specifically who, but what he's saying that favoritism actually kills off the game, because players should be selected by merit, based on merit and not based on favoritism. Do you think this is a prevalent problem across all football clubs? I mean, I wouldn't mention any names because I'm really not sure who he's talking about, but do you think this is a issue for us, favoritism in the teams?
I think, Aaron, favoritism exists in every walk of life. Even when you have 2 kids, you might favor one over the other. It's just natural. This is where the coach has to be very, very neutral. And it doesn't help when our own technical director, what's his name, Michel Sablon, said that winning is not important. So to answer Sal's first line, right, where he says why we are winless, it's not because of the rest of the problem, it's because of Sablon. Because he doesn't want to stress on the importance of winning. He thinks that as long as you go out there, you kick the ball for 90 minutes, you come back with a shirt full of perspiration, it's enough. You don't need to win. This is the mentality that this guy is creating. I think he has to go. I'll talk about, a potential candidate in a while afterwards. But I think it's enough of him. He's living in the past. So what if he created Thibaut Courtois? He's not living up to his expectations here. His comments about players not needing to win, or it's not important to win, is just uncalled for. He's creating a very anti-winning mentality among players. And it's probably now rubbed on into the national team as well. Favoritism, I don't know about that, but yeah, if you notice that he seems to be always favoring certain players, maybe it's hard to speculate. Maybe he's picking them based on their performance. I hope that's the reason, but not favoritism.
Okay, I have a suggestion here from Muhammad Iswadi. And this is probably a suggestion on how to make the league more competitive and hopefully get better players out of the pool. So what he's suggesting is we should reduce the S-League to 8 local teams. That means no Brunei DPMM, no Garina Young Lions, 8 local teams. That means we have to add in one more team, probably promote from NFL or get back one of the 3 teams that are sitting out. 8 teams in NFL Division 1, 8 teams in NFL Division 2, 8 teams in NFL Division 3. And then have a League Cup where all the teams are grouped evenly. And then from there, lower division teams have to have the chance to compete against the top team. And then this would help to narrow the gap and increase competitiveness across all divisions. Having an all-local league. Okay, let's just talk about the top tier. Having an all-local league, yes, it will increase the national pool, but by removing Albirex and removing Brunei DPMM, do you think it's a good move?
I think the DPMM and the Albirex fans will not be happy with the idea. I'm okay provided that there is a suitable and capable replacement and the strength of the league is not weakened further. Because right now, yes, Albirex has won the last 8 major trophies and they could go for the 9th next week, yeah, when they play global. But they are also adding a spice to the league. Everybody wants to beat them. Nobody can do it. I mean, Warriors did it this year, and I think Home United did it as well. Besides that, everybody has struggled against them. But why? I think we need to wake up and see the situation. We need to assess our strengths and weaknesses against Albirex. They are ultimately a bunch of school kids or graduates, yeah, and they are doing very well. If anything, this should spur us to emulate them and improve our own standards. Let's not just sit down and just cry over spilled milk, We need to look at ourselves. Are we of any standard? At the moment, no. Most clubs are terrible. I would say the least. Yeah. I like your idea about increasing the local talent pool. Yeah, we can bring in more clubs, but can they fit into the league? Can they, like I mentioned earlier on, the jump from amateur status to professional is a big, big jump. Can these clubs cope? We've seen in the past, when Gombak first came in, they struggled for the first couple of years. They had a couple of results, yeah, but generally they struggle against other teams. And they need to find the dollar and cents as well. It's not easy. On paper, yes, it looks beautiful, all the 8s. Maybe a nice 4D number there, 8 for Saturday. Yeah, but theoretically, I mean, yes, it's all right, but and in practical terms may not be right at this moment when we shouldn't be rocking the league too much.
All right, Sal is saying that why should we be aiming for SEA Games when we should go to the age group World Cups? Well, interesting thought over there. And some comments coming in from listeners as well. They're saying that we should send our players to other leagues such as the A-League or even the Thai League. And then there are other comments coming in that says that if our players want to play in other stronger leagues, they need to prove it themselves. I've asked this question in a couple of episodes back, whereby which players my guests felt that would be good enough to play in overseas leagues. Unfortunately, some people feel that playing in Malaysia is considered a step up. But I'm sure you disagree, because I disagree. Personally, I disagree. I don't think that playing in Malaysia is a step up. But perhaps playing in front of bigger crowds is an incentive, but it doesn't mean that the league is better. I mean, Lions 12 proved that when we put the cream of the crop together, went in and basically whooped everybody's ass. But looking at this notion of sending players to stronger leagues, we did have a couple of players who tried their luck abroad. Hassan Sani was one good example. He went to Thai Army. Yeah, he had a good stint there, I felt, but was rather unfortunate to have his contract. Well, I'm not sure if he left of his own accord or whether the Thai club asked him. Yeah, and then Hafiz was even more sway because he went there, played for maybe half a season, and then the club closed down. But well, looking at the current crop of players, okay, I'm going to ask you this: who do you feel is good enough to play overseas, be it in the S League or be it in the national team?
Okay, Aaron, before I answer the question, right? I've seen on Facebook Baji John, yeah, our former goalkeeping coach. I think he's probably listening in right now, maybe. He's been stressing that the S-League should produce players to be sent abroad. But before coming to your question again, let me rephrase it. Looking at the current bunch of players, which foreign league team would want any of them? I think only maybe a couple, Haris Harun, and he's on loan from JDT, right? He's not going anywhere. JDT will take his ass back. Yeah, and maybe Hassan Sani. That's about it. Nobody else in my mind. Maybe Ramli, Faris Ramli. Yeah, you know, some club in maybe, I don't know, Laos or somewhere might offer him a contract. But if I'm running a club in Thailand or Vietnam or even Malaysia for instance, why would I want to make use of one foreign player slot for a Singaporean just because he needs that play time overseas? Doesn't make sense to me, because these players are of no good standard. Seriously, you know, like, what have they done so far? They can't even win a game. You know, they can't even score. You know, like, they can't even defend. Like yesterday, you know, they were all in shambles. You saw the third goal, right? And like, yeah, they were just ball watching. You know, like, come on, you know, that this is not football. You know, if I was a talent scout from one of these clubs, thinking that I might bring in one of these players, I think I would have changed my mind yesterday. I would probably gone for a Bahraini. They were lovely, you know. I felt at one stage, why am I not a Bahraini fan? Because they were playing very good football. They were composed. They were not the best in the world. They were not like Ronaldo's or whatever, but they were very composed, very simple. They kept the ball. This is something that really we have to do.
Okay, let's talk a bit about this comment coming in from, well, WK Lai once again. We do know players who feel they will never get into the national team even when they're playing well in the league. Therefore, you know, maybe that's the reason why they don't even bother to play, to turn up on match days and to play well. Which brings me to another point. I think it's part of an even bigger problem. Yeah, of course, there's a lot of people mentioning that we should increase the national pool and have many more teams in the league and all that. But I think WK Lai's comment brings me to a thought. No matter who we have in the national pool, the usual suspects will still be fielded. And this leads me to my point whereby I don't think there are enough scouts in FAS. I'll give you an example. Recently, it was reported that there was a central midfielder playing for an NFL Division 2 team. Well, he's half Nigerian and half Singaporean Chinese. And next season, he's signing for a club in Switzerland, and not for the youth team, but he's signing for the first team. How did FAS miss out on him? I mean, if he's good enough to play in Switzerland for the first team, he must be good enough for, I wouldn't say the national team, but maybe for the SEA Games squad. So, again, this is a big problem whereby, okay, people may say favoritism is one issue, but the other issue is, before we even blame the coach for picking the same players all the time, is he even being given a heads up on who are the players playing in the lower divisions or playing in the teams which are not under his radar? For example, Balestier Khalsa, where we only see Zaiful Nizam all the time. I mean, there are other players in Balestier Khalsa which I personally feel could make it. I mean, Rahan Rahman, we all know his caliber. Yes, a bit temperamental sometimes, but he's a midfield enforcer, gets the job done, great set pieces. And Hazwan Halim, who has been tearing down the wings this season, have not been considered for this job. So, okay, putting favoritism aside, do you think scouting, how do you think the scouting is right now for the FA? Is it good enough, or basically it doesn't exist at all?
I mean, first of all, when you mentioned Balestier, I think you put a big smile on Lee Hua Min's face. Yeah, I mean, that club doesn't get too many mentions other than Zaiful Nizam. Now, coming to scouting, if you mentioned that there's a player in Division 2 who's now getting a contract in a Swiss first team, I mean, a Swiss club first team, it shows that really our technical director and his team are crap. They have to go. I mean, scouting should come under the technical director's job scope. He should have that capable scouts going out there watching games and reporting to somebody within the department, eventually the report should come to him. He should be laying that groundworks for his scouts to go out there and find talent. So if this is the case, that means something is really wrong in that setup. So we should send our investigators to 100 Tyrate Road to find out what's happening. Are the scouts, going out to games and then eventually landing up in a teh tarik shop? It looks like, yeah. So how do you go about to make sure that this doesn't happen? I think they should be given a camera, record every game, bring back, analyze with a colleague. I think that should be better off. Yeah, I mean, like nowadays technology is easy to get. Just bring a camera or even a phone with good memory, record every single game that you scout, and then you report. They should be held accountable, and they should be made to work.
Okay, we're gonna move on a little bit more to something that you have prepared in your mind, lah. Okay, some comments here saying that give Sablon more time. Sablon is good, good technical director. Some people are saying that we shouldn't give Sablon any more chance. He's basically just sitting there and collecting his pay every month. So a lot of differing views in the comments. Now you did mention earlier that you thought Sablon wasn't a good choice and you would go for an alternate technical director. Now let's hear your thoughts. Who do you think would be a good fit for the current situation right now?
Okay, if Sablon, you're listening to me, I think you should go. You should just resign and go. Yeah. Don't make us sack you, yeah? You don't want a red mark in your CV, I think. Okay, anyway, before I mention this name, let me just tell you what a technical director should be all about. He should be somebody who knows the local culture. He may not necessarily be a local or Singaporean. He, in my mind, should have been somebody who has coached here before and the region. And he knows about nasi lemak, about the fasting month, char kway teow, thosai, because ultimately these are the things that will bother him day to day. And also the national service obligation. I've heard in the past there are coaches who come in and like, what? I'm going to lose my player to national service? How do we go about this? So we need to get somebody who is aware of all these situations. I mean, Sablon, for all his worth, I think he probably, when he first came here, he was probably thinking, probably needs about a couple of years to understand the local culture. That's 2 years gone and a lot of money, maybe $500,000. I don't know how much he's getting. I assume maybe $500,000 is gone just for him to acclimatize to Singapore. So this is a background that I think we should be looking at a technical director. And what I would have in mind if I was Lim Kia Tong, which I'm not, I wish I was, have a panel of technical directors. Have a foreigner who has been here before, who's done it, make him the head, and then you pull in locals, like say for example like Kadeyaya, there's a name being brandished here and there. Maybe even Siak Po Leong, a former national coach, national captain, Terry Padmanabhan, who's done it before. Maybe much more reason, maybe even ID Iskandar. These are the people I think who can still contribute, and they should be given a role under this new technical panel. And now just to reveal who that person I have in mind, he's coached in Singapore with Home United. I think he won them a cup and a league title. He's coached in various clubs in Malaysia, Johor, Kelantan. He's done well. He even brought a local club to the AFC Cup semis in 2003, if I'm not wrong. He's coached in the region. He's coached the Thai national team. He's been a technical director there. He's been with the Vietnamese team. He even brought Laos their very first ever World Cup qualifying point just recently. And he's also coached the Sulk, Nicholas Anelka at Mumbai FC. And the person I'm talking about is Steve Darby. He's been a great servant of the game. Steve, if you're listening to us right now, we want you here. Send your CV in, I think Steve is somebody who's done it. He knows the culture very well. Even heard him talking on the BBC about Singapore football once, about how the betting situation affected his players. And I think he deserves a crack at it. Michel should go. Steve, I think, is the best person at the moment. He should come in.
Can we also get your thoughts about the national team coach? I know you are an advocate of hashtag Sundram out, lah. As many of the listeners who are listening in right now, lots of comments coming in saying that Sundram should go, he's parking the bus and all that. Okay, so let's hear your thoughts about the national team coach. Would you go for a foreign coach or would you go for a local coach? Because there are some comments here that are saying that we should, whatever money we are spending on, for example, the TD, we should be channeling these funds back into FAS and using it to hire a world-class manager instead. Of course, they stop short of saying who they feel would be good, lah. So maybe, Tom, let's hear your thoughts. Who do you think would be a good fit for, let's say if Steve Darby comes in as the TD, who would be a good fit to complement him as a national team coach?
Okay, if you're thinking about a world-class coach, somebody like Ancelotti or Klopp or even Ferguson, forget about it. They're not going to come. When they look at Singapore's 173rd position at the moment, which is bound to drop even further, they are like, forget it. I remember at one time Douglas Moore had an offer from Moldova, and they were like something like 80-something position in the FIFA rankings, and he turned it down. It was in the press, yeah. We are not going to attract anybody world-class. What I would suggest is have a strong disciplinarian, somebody who gives no shit about players. He would really stress on training, have no favoritism in his mind. And the name I have in mind is also an ex-Home United coach. Trust me, I'm not a home fan, eh? Although I did wear the blue of police at one time, yeah. But what I feel is that Paul, what's his name? Lim Lei Seng? Yeah, Lee Lim Seng, yeah. Yeah, I think he'll be a good fit. He is somebody that's result-driven. He's been, of course, in Home United I think, for 2 years. Got them to the cup final, but they missed out on winning it. I think that led to him losing his job. But importantly is that he knows the culture as well. And he had some problem with Shafki Shaban, right? Over discipline. So that's what I meant, a disciplinarian. Somebody who gives no shit about your attitude, about your reputation. It's about what you do on the field. I think we need him. Or somebody of the caliber. We don't need any Tom, Dick and Harry who, is swayed by emotions. Or somebody who thinks that, if you wear yellow boots, you deserve a place on the team. There was a guy with yellow boots yesterday, right? Yeah. My wife was sitting next to me like, what's wrong with the guy? Did he highlight his boots or what?
Okay, so touching on this topic about TD, we have plenty of suggestions coming in, alternate suggestions for us. Some names, interesting names. Jita Singh, who was actually TD for quite a while. Barry Whitbread, who was coach during the very successful, he was a TD as well. And also Vincent Subramaniam. Do you think Vincent would be a good fit for the TD? I mean, he's coaching the Young Lions now. He did lead them to finally their first win this season over Warriors FC. I've been in close contact with Coach Vincent. He's quite a no-nonsense guy. I mean, he's not as firm as he used to be back in SCF FC, but he's still quite firm with his players. And from what I see, players do like him. They like to work with him. On the topic of getting a local to be a TD, actually not many names come to mind. But Vincent Subramaniam, interesting. Do you think this will work for us?
I don't know if his bosses will take him because he did come out and say that he had very bad preparations, right? Yeah, so that might work against him. I think he'll be a good candidate. He's been there. He's been in India. He was in, I think, similar position, capacity in India. I think it's Bangalore, somewhere in Bangalore, if I'm not wrong. Bangalore, yeah. He'll be a good fit. But why I would suggest a foreigner is because we see things from a different perspective from a foreigner that we might not see from a Singaporean. I mean, somebody like Vincent, and I think other names mentioned earlier on, Jita Singh, they could be part of the panel. Have maybe Steve Darby as a head technical director, and then you can have like Jita to contribute. Vincent to contribute. They could carry on their roles in whatever clubs they're playing, but at the same time, they could contribute as co-technical directors. We need not have just one guy running the show like now Sablon. What has he done? Come out and say that we don't need results, we don't need to win. It's an embarrassment. We don't need embarrassing situation. We need somebody who is there and he has others to check him. If Vincent feels that Darby is not doing a good job, he has the right to speak up and get things right. So it's a panel that discusses things and not just an individual who makes decisions.
All right, so moving on from TD, let's talk about the coaches. Again, there are many suggestions for the coaches. Let's see who we have. Robert Alberts, who was okay. I think he had quite a successful time in Singapore. Also, we have names such as, national team coach Zico, Kiatisuk Senamong, and also Ong Kim Swee. A lot of foreign coaches. Now, this is a very interesting name that I see right here from Muhammad Iswadi. Kade Yaya, who, did quite well with the YOG. He's saying that we should get Kade Yaya for the time being. All the players respect him. Do you agree with this?
Yeah, I think Kade is a pretty respectable guy. But do we want somebody for a stopgap action? Or are we looking at the long term? Do you want, when Sundram first took over, it was a temporary 1-year contract. Was it a rolling contract or something, right? To that extent. And then you see what happened now. We have wasted 2 years of our footballing lives with 2 wins in 22 games. I think let's look at long term. Somebody who will be there for the next, say, 5-6 years, like what Radi Abramovich was. He was a big success here. Brought us 2 Suzuki Cups, AFF Championships. We need somebody of that caliber who can carry us to the next level, not a stopgap. Kade is a good guy, as I mentioned, but is he ready? Maybe he could be like an assistant to the eventual coach, but I wouldn't throw him into the deep end of the pool immediately.
Okay, I think enough about the officials and coaches. Now let's maybe move on to the players in the national team. Since today's topic is actually largely on the review of the game, we've done our review, and maybe now let's look towards the future, more on the players that are in the national team right now. Earlier on, I saw a comment saying that Singapore's only strong department is the goalkeeper department, and 2 names that he mentioned are Hassan Sani and Zaiful Nizam, which is kind of a worrying thing for me, because if you look past these 2 players, who else do we have in the pipeline in the goalkeeper department? I think maybe if you asked me this question last year, I would say Izwan Mahmud is actually quite a good up-and-coming goalkeeper who would be ready to take over Hassan if, let's say, Hassan suffers maybe a major injury or decides not to play for national team anymore. But if you ask me today, is Izwan Mahmud a good replacement? I'm afraid I will have to say no. His form has been quite erratic at times. And at a certain time, Hairunisam Jumaat was actually considered to be quite a good replacement. But of course, today he's not doing so well for Warriors. I do feel sorry for him. He was promising, but I'm not sure what happened to his form at Warriors. Now, looking at the pipeline of goalkeepers, let's say if we want to keep this tradition of having good goalkeepers going on, apart from Hassan and maybe Shazwan Buhari, do you see any other good keepers in the league that could prop up the team on their shoulders, as Hassan did on many occasions? If, let's say, hypothetically, Hassan decides not to play for national team anymore or is injured and cannot play.
Okay, I have one guy in mind. I saw him play on Saturday for the Singapore veterans, Rezal Hassan. Yeah, that's how bad our goalkeeping situation is. We really miss Baji John. I think we should bring him back as soon as we can. But in terms of like what you mentioned, there's hardly any other names. It's a pity, goalkeeping has always been our strong point. We've always created good players in the past. David Lee, even our current FS Council member Yaakob Hashim was a participant in the '84 Asian Cup. Yeah, we don't have too many players coming through, so I would blame it down to the supply chain, the COEs. What's happening? Who is taking responsibility? I remember at one time when Geylang United was around. Robert Lim was their head of talent scouting or whatever you call it. He had many goalkeepers, and he even discovered Lionel Lewis accidentally. When Lionel turned up to just accompany his friends for a trial, and I remember this story where one team was short of a player, so one of Lionel's friends said, "Hey, come on in and just stand there lah." So Lionel got in there, stood there, and then that's it. The next thing he was playing for Geylang, and then eventually national team. Again, scouts and people with an eye for detail. Do we have them?
Okay, on this topic, right, I actually have a very adverse reaction coming from a few listeners who are all telling me that, the up-and-coming keeper should be Khairulin Khalid of Hougang United. Now, okay, I wouldn't say I disagree. I've seen Kai pull off quite a number of good saves. But I'm kind of puzzled that, this season, he hasn't been used to full effect by Philip Au. In fact, in a few games, we see Ridwan Barudin playing in place of Kai. I'm not sure why. Is it because of form or injury or whatever? Okay, let's just say in this situation, make it easy for you. I narrow it down to two goalkeepers. Let's take Hassan Sani out of the equation, and let's just have Shazam Buhari and Khairulin Khalid. If it was down to these two goalkeepers, who would you pick as your first choice for the national team?
I think I'll pick Shazwan. I'll have more confidence in him. And by the way, are we getting a lot of Hougang fans listening to us today?
All right, I have another suggestion coming in right away. Zafan Rohaizat, mentioned by one of our writers, Cao Xian. So he's saying that Zafan Rohaizat is also a pretty good goalkeeper. He's a young goalkeeper. He's only mostly let down by his defenders. A good goalkeeping coach like Baji would get the best out of him. Now, interesting, because Zafan is... He does have a lot of potential. I mean, I've seen him throw himself at the ball at players bravely just so that he can keep the ball out. But I do agree that, playing at Young Lions, one of the team that let in the most goals this season, is kind of a letdown for a player like him. Now, theoretically, if we put Zafan Rohaizat in an S-League team, let's say, for example, Home United, let's say Hassan goes elsewhere and Zafan comes into Home United, would he finish the season with maybe close to what Yosuke Nozawa has right now, the Golden Gloves Award? What do you think?
Quite a difficult one. I think that the Albrecht keeper is about the best in the league right now. If you do not include, he's probably the best goalkeeper around. But the Young Lion goalkeeper, he would struggle because at this moment he's already probably at a very low morale, and going to Home United, if he does that right, it will be a difficult step for him.
Okay, a lot of Hougang Wolves are calling me out saying that, hey, Aaron, it's rotation, it's nothing to do with injuries. Okay, I apologize. I do follow the league, but I don't follow it as closely as you guys because you are following your team. Whereas I'm following the entire league, but I did notice this trend of, Ridwan playing. Whenever I'm at Hougang Stadium, I don't see Kai playing. He's always on the bench. So, okay, if you guys say it's rotation, then...
If it's rotation, then it's Philip Au, Jurgen Klopp in disguise.
Okay, all right. So it's rotation. Now, I saw a very interesting comment over here, and I think this again contributes back to increasing the national pool of players. And it actually affects a club which right now a lot of people are calling for them to sit out because they have won too much. Albirex Niigata. Okay, people are saying right here that why don't we look at Albirex and get them to convert a portion of the team to Singaporeans? By doing so, we raise the standard of the players who play there. We also have more Singaporean players playing in the league as opposed to having a team that is solely providing players to the parent club back in Niigata. You agree with this?
Aaron, when Albrecht first came to Singapore, I was hoping that would be the case, that there'll be some locals involved. I think at the moment only Ko Muitui, the club chairman or something, and Roy Krishnan, the logistic officer, are the only two Singaporeans there. Or maybe there could be one or two other administrative staff. But in terms of players, there's nobody. And I would go one step further. Have maybe say minimum of 5 local players playing at any one time. So you can perhaps have 8 locals in your squad. So you have 3 on the bench, 5 starting, and if you replace a local, another local has to come in. You must maintain the 5 players minimum on the field. If you want to have 8 all 8, by all means go ahead. But I think that'll be good for the league. You give exposure to more local players coming through. At the same time, I have another condition that any one local player can only play for Albrechts for 2 years, giving more players a chance to play for them. You expose these players to different culture, different way of training, different way of life, because it's not just about football, it's about getting on with other foreigners, and in a club where predominantly it's all Japanese. I think we have to do all that to be a step forward.
So if you had a choice, which local players would you pick to be in Albirex solely for the purpose of development, so that they would emerge as better players and help the national team in the future?
I would go for Irfan. It'd be nice to see him play with a bunch of short people. I would pick Faris Ramli. It'd be interesting to see how he fits into that kind of environment, and maybe even Haris Harun. The backbone. A defender, a central midfielder, and a forward. I think that'd be nice.
Yeah, those are some nice suggestions. I'm going to move on shortly to some suggestions from the listeners who are asking who should be the first 11 after the Bahrain match. I think they're asking you, Tom, to give your first 11. But I think before we move on to that, right, let's just address some of the players who did not get an opportunity to play in these 2 matches despite being called up to the team. You look at some of the players that were called in this time round, they were kind of young. Looking at players like Iksan, Hami, Shannon Stephen. Wailun was considered for a bit, but this round was missed out. Emric, who had a decent game against Hong Kong, but was dropped out from the final squad against Bahrain. Now, these players on the bench, it's a thing to be called up. It's another thing to be called up and not being played. Do you think that there were players in these that were called up, but it was quite sayang not to see them play, kind of waste? Do you have the same thoughts as me?
Yeah, one player comes to my mind, Shannon Stephen. I think he's done well in the S.League. Got a couple of goals for the Young Lions in crucial games. I think he is one guy who should be given a chance. I know his dad is a former coach, right, or a former player, yeah. Stephen, yeah. Nice guy. And I hope we don't lose him to another country. I hope he stays in Singapore. I think that name comes to my mind first. He's like I would say he's like a Michael Owen, maybe. Just bursting onto the scene. He was out with a bad injury last year, right? Came back now, firing all cylinders. Yeah, we should give him a chance.
Okay, so let's move on to your selection for the coming match against Chinese Taipei. Now, this is a funny thing because I've heard some contradicting information about the league next year. There are a few different versions. First, of course, we've heard the version whereby we're going to scrap the S-League. There's not going to be any S-League next year anymore. And basically, I'm not sure what's going to happen to the clubs. And the other version that I've heard is that there's still going to be a league, but the league is going to start much later, probably somewhere in April or May. So that's going to squeeze our football calendar, or rather, it will get postponed to such a late time of the year. And the implication that I see is the next game against Chinese Taipei, because that match is happening somewhere around March. And it's a bloody long off-season if, let's say, the league really starts in April or May. So, how do we judge which players get to play in the national team? Do we go by the same team sheet that we have, basically just photocopy and just go with what we have? Or do we look at, other players coming in from the other clubs based on their performance? For me, it's a question mark. I don't know how it is for you, but it would be interesting to hear who you would pick for the Chinese Taipei game. Assuming that the form of the players from now until March are largely the same. What formation will you play first of all?
Okay, first of all, to answer the question, I wouldn't go down to the players' names, but I would actually look at the possibility of giving younger players a chance. Because anyway, this Taipei game is a dead rubber. We are not going anywhere. I would rather throw in the young players, even like Shannon Steven. Give him a chance, even a young goalkeeper. See what they can do, and there's no point putting a 36-year-old Daniel Bennett or, I don't know, Safwan Bahrain up front. Get a proper striker, a young striker, doesn't matter, Iqbal Hussein, whoever, I wouldn't mention the lineup, but I think I will go along that line. A really young lineup. We have nothing to lose. Even if you can get some under 21 players, do it.
Okay, so next point, coming to the next point. Again, on the national team, there's some suggestions from Iswadi about getting players naturalized. He mentioned two names, Jordan Webb and Serena Kamara. I think apart from these two players, the other players that were mentioned were Song Wei-yong from Home United and also Kento Nagasaki from Albirex Niigata. I want to hear your thoughts about naturalization of players. Is this still going to work for us? I think maybe in the short term, but what kind of ramifications do you think we would have if we naturalize these four players?
Now, first of all, it's going to create a big uproar because there are fans who are saying 100% local, no foreigners. They're going to get pissed off. But I care them. I mean, I'm not bothered about those guys. If they want to be pissed off, carry on. But my view is that, if these players, Jordan Webb, Camara, and the other two are willing to become Singaporeans, they're willing to put their heart or the national flag on their heart, then let's do it. Let's bring them in. I think they have proven themselves in the league. They have done well. They deserve a shot. If they're willing to give up their passports and take the red one, let's do it.
Okay, let's shift the topic back to the league. There's a comment coming in here from Jeff Saleh, who's a Geylang International fan. So the assumption is that Albirex will remain winning, but let's say if they end up at the bottom, will we still want our locals to be there? In the name of development, I guess. What do you think?
Well, when you look at any league, somebody's got to finish bottom. You cannot escape that. I remember when Albirex had a team in Cambodia. That team finished bottom of the league, and I think they had a large number of Cambodian players, local players. Yeah, it might happen, but at the moment, at the same time, I think we should be looking at further in terms of a cultural exchange. It could even be. What's the difference now? Young Lions is at the bottom, together with Balestier and another club. They are in the bottom three. So, do you mean to say that you don't sign for Balestier if this is the situation? So whether you are able to finish top or not, that does not make a difference. Importantly, you play for the club. If you are signed, you play, and it's a cultural exchange. I think that's more important.
Okay, comment coming in from Cheng Wei Chong, who's saying that we should scrap all S-League matches which are being played at neutral venues. Actually, there's only one neutral venue. Okay, two lah. If you consider the League Cup, sorry, not the League Cup, the Charity Shield to be a neutral venue because it was played at Sports Hub. I think the neutral venue that he's talking about is Jalan Besar Stadium lah. Base football clubs back in their geographical location. A bit tricky lah, this one, because you see, first of all, the reason why they put games at Jalan Besar, from my understanding, is because they wanted to have it easy to broadcast the games on Fridays. That's why certain games on Fridays are played in Jalan Besar. Of course, this season, I think everything has changed because you see broadcasts coming from different stadiums. I mean, technology has advanced, and I think perhaps FAS is also trying to adopt this approach. They started showing NFL games as well, even in places like Serangoon Stadium or Yishun Stadium. So, having these S-League matches to stop playing at neutral venues, are you for or against this idea?
Cheng Wei Chong, I hear your comments very, very often, and I actually agree with you. I think we should do away with Jalan Besar Friday night games. Why? Simple reason. Imagine you have a game between Albirex and Balestier, and it's on a Friday night. Albirex is a home team playing in Jalan Besar against Balestier. So you are giving the home supporters, the Albirex fans, a longer distance to travel to Jalan Besar as compared to the Balestier fans who make the short way down from Toa Payoh. It makes no sense. I think we should make use of the regional stadiums. Every club has a stadium. This stadium should be used solely for these clubs. The Charity Shield, I think, is a bit different. If you want to have it at Jalan Besar, go ahead. But then there should be no league points for that match. It should be purely a Charity Shield match. And Jalan Besar, if let's say the Young Lions are dissolved, it should only be used for the Charity Shield and the Cup finals, the Singapore Cup and the League Cup. That's about it. It should be a Wembley kind of a feel, where you only use the stadium for Cup finals, big games. I think that's the same thing in, this year is a bit different because Tottenham Hotspur is using the stadium. But prior to that, Wembley has always been the home of English football, where you only had big games, Cup finals, that's it. And I think we should adopt that mentality here as well. That Jalan Besar is the home of Singapore football, like what the sign says outside the stadium, with the 5 stars. So only the Cup finals and important games should be there, not the league.
Now, to this effect, I have actually an interesting question to ask you, lah. And this is an observation I made, lah. When the Sports Hub was opened, I think a few years back, a lot of complaints came in from Singaporeans, lah. Why is the national team not playing in the Sports Hub? It's supposed to be the home of Kallang. Kallang has always been the home of Singapore football, right? And you shift it to Jalan Besar. And Jalan Besar is like, according to Singaporeans, so small, so packed. When you sit in there, the opposite fans, you're so near to each other. But then again, there are others who look at it from the perspective that Jalan Besar is just nice because football is on the downturn, and basically you can't get as many fans as we had back in the 90s when we still had the Kallang Raw. And therefore, we should play at Jalan Besar because the atmosphere at Jalan Besar is much better. The curved roof makes it more noisy, sound more noisy than it actually is. And, recently we shifted 2 games back to the National Stadium. You were there for the second game. You saw how, empty it was. Yeah, it felt empty. Even though there were people, there were supporters group who were chanting and singing, but, when the stadium is empty, you just don't have the same kind of feel. So, question for you, Tom. What do you think is better for us? To remain at Jalan Besar for our national team games, which you did mention, Jalan Besar is the home of Singapore football and should be the home of the Singapore national team. Or should we consider playing all future games in the Sports Hub, which we tried, and I felt that atmosphere just wasn't there.
I would say it was very comfortable sitting on those nice seats in the Sports Hub. But, the atmosphere was not there at all. The crowd was about, I think, 2,600 plus. It was very poor crowd. And I think we should play every national game at the Jalan Besar Stadium unless we get a huge crowd. The demands of our tickets are like through the roof. Pre-match demands are high. Then we can consider moving to to National Stadium, the Sports Hub. But otherwise, it should always be Jalan Besar.
Okay, Bernard Chan has a comment here about the Singapore Cup. He say, don't invite foreign teams into the Singapore Cup. Well, Bernard is a Hougang fan. Hougang did fall to Global en route to the final. Unfortunately, they fell. I was rooting for Hougang personally. I felt that there was a handball. It was a handball, but unfortunately, it wasn't given Hougang's way. But looking at the bigger picture, having foreign teams in the Singapore Cup, do you think it's beneficial for us? Having foreign teams in the league is one thing, but having invitational foreign teams come into the Singapore Cup, does it add value? We've seen Cambodian clubs come in and hammer our Warriors and then get hammered by other teams. We've also seen teams that come in and really give a good fight like Global. I think Global probably did well because it's coached by someone who coached in the S.League, and therefore he knows how the different teams play. But I think this is an interesting thought by Bernard. Like, don't invite foreign teams into Singapore Cup. And again, one more thing before I pass the mic to you. There is talk of a boycott. There's a boycott being organized saying that it's 2 foreign teams. I don't want to watch them. Let's boycott the Singapore Cup final because there are no Singapore teams in there. Yeah, I won't mention names, but there's a boycott going around. Now, I want to hear your thoughts. Okay, first thing first is, are you for or against having foreign teams? Second thing, what are your thoughts on a boycott? Do you think it's a good or bad idea?
Hi, Bernard. I hope you managed to get home in time, yeah? Stuck in the MRT, right? Okay, now, first point regarding the Singapore Cup. I would rather have a pure Singaporean Singapore Cup because it's Singapore Cup and we have a place in the AFC tournament from there. The winner gets into the AFC Cup, yeah? So why invite a foreign club into that league, into that competition, I mean? If anything, let's expand it, invite a few NFL clubs to make up the numbers, maybe 16 is the normal good number for a knockout competition. Or even change the format of the Singapore Cup to a group stage, like it happened in the first couple of years. It was a group stage competition which evolved into a knockout after that. If you are really hard up about bringing in foreign teams, I think the League Cup is a good one. It's run over like 2 weeks. So these clubs know that if they manage to get into the final, they'll be here for 2 weeks. That's it. Like now, I think last year there was an issue, right? Where the eventual semi-finalist, the Filipino team or something, they couldn't come in because they had a league game. And then there was problem with our haze the previous year. So there were problems getting the teams in here in time. So we faced a lot of problems when the competitions are over a long period. Because the Singapore Cup, I think, stretches about 6 months at least. Yeah, so if it's a League Cup that you invite them for, I think it works. You had those 8 or 10 local teams plus a few foreign teams, and they know that their stay here will only be 2 weeks. Maybe put them in Hotel 81 or Fragrance Hotel, wherever they want to stay. They can find good food in the area. Yeah, and then that's it. After 2 weeks they're gone. I think that should be the way it should be. The Singapore Cup, like what Bernard said, it should be for Singapore teams. I feel sorry for you. You got eliminated with a handball decision, Bernard, and Hougang. That's tough life. But yeah, next year, let's hope it's all Singapore Cup, Singapore teams.
A flurry of comments coming in, all agreeing with what you said. Singapore Cup should only include Singapore teams. We shouldn't include any foreign teams. Well, looking at some of the comments, they're saying that, like Bente is saying, why are we bothering about foreign clubs? Are our clubs not good enough? And this thing about having the NFL teams come in is saying that Singapore Cup should be expanded to all tiers of Singapore football, include NFL teams, let them play in the early rounds, and then S.League clubs can come in the last 32, just like the English Football Association, the actual cup that they have, the FA Cup, yeah. Not a bad idea, I think. In a way, earlier on we were speaking about scouts and how FAS does not have enough scouts. Perhaps this is a good chance for them to actually find some good players in the midst of, during when the Singapore Cup is going on. Let's say, for example, GFA Sporting Westlake plays Home United. Well, based on the current situation, I'm sure GFA is going to get trashed. But then again, they have a couple of good players. It might not be local players, it could be foreign players, but there are good foreign players in the NFL as well that we can unearth and hopefully, bring them into the S-League. There are also some comments here that go back to our earlier discussion about the Sports Hub, and I think 90% of the people here are all saying that Jalan Besar is the right choice. We shouldn't be playing at the Sports Hub, and Sports Hub is only good for concerts and hosting pop stars. Okay. Let's go on to the next portion.
When you mentioned about the FA Cup, the League Cup, and the Singapore Cup, I think we have 3 knockout competitions in our local calendar. Everybody knows the Singapore Cup is limited to foreign teams plus the local S-League teams. The League Cup is just the S-League teams, and the FA Cup includes the NFLs and the teams from the Prime Leagues. Squads of the S-League clubs. I think we need to streamline a little bit more. Perhaps the FA Cup could be expanded to include every social team out there. You form a Aaron Chan Football Club team. Why not? The FA should take you in, and just like in England, where in the first round proper of the FA Cup you have every funny team coming in. We should have that here. Every club, even a school team. If you want to put a school team into the FA Cup, do it. I think we need to do that. That will widen the talent pool. Scouts can do their jobs. We need to go down that route. Maybe as I mentioned, the League Cup can be an invitation for some foreign clubs, but maybe limited to youth players, youth teams, like we had a Singa Cup, something along the line. You bring in maybe maybe Thai Farmers Bank's under-20 team. That's about it. You limit their age, but the FA Cup could be expanded to all levels of society within Singapore.
And also a comment coming in earlier from Cheng Wei Chong, which I kind of skipped past. I think I'm going to address it right now. He did say that that clubs should be assigned based on geographical location. I think right now they kind of are. I mean, even though the name does not necessarily reflect the area that they represent. For example, Albrecht Niigata, but they have built up quite a close bond with the Ihua community, which is not far from here. So I'm looking at other clubs in the league, like for example, Home United. Someone did tell me I have no affiliation to Home United, even though I live nearby, because they are called Home United. If one day they move elsewhere, that's it. My club is gone, and who am I going to support then? Then of course I told him that in NFL Division 1 there's a Bishan Bucks. You can support Bishan Bucks. Then he's like, I don't want to watch NFL. But in a bigger picture, right? Do you think that these clubs should look at changing the names in the near future? Like, for example, SAFFC. We've always known them as SAFFC. I mean, they played in the old Jurong Stadium. Then they shifted to Choa Chu Kang. And they've been at Choa Chu Kang for donkey years, but nobody ever calls them like Choa Chu Kang United or knows or identifies them as the Choa Chu Kang team, even though they are playing there. And this also brings me to the point whereby if you don't have a sense of affiliation to the team or a sense of belonging, right, then there's no, you might not be interested in the league. You might not want to watch your team because it's not your team anymore. What's your take on this? Do you think that clubs should be renamed based on the area that they represent?
Yes, to answer the question, yes, I think they should. But they need not cut themselves off completely from what they are called now. So like Warriors FC can be called maybe Choa Chu Kang Warriors. Have that area association with the name. And maybe Home United can be called Home at Bishan. Something to the extent where you don't cut off completely from what you are right now. Because there's a lot of history behind these clubs, which we do not want to throw away overnight. Like I know there's a school around this vicinity, Boon Lay Primary, it was Boon Lay Primary School. Overnight, the MOE renamed it to Jurong Primary. Everything is gone. The website is gone. I know some guys who used to study there in the past. Their history, everything is down the drain. It's gone. So I think coming to the clubs, they should retain whatever identity they currently have and maybe add on. I agree with Cheong, right? When he mentioned this, I think we need to change to have some kind of affiliation to the area. Otherwise, at Choa Chu Kang resident will be like, why should I support this team? It's not Choa Chu Kang. It's Warriors. What are they? What are Warriors? Fighters? I'm not a fighter, yeah? Yeah, I think if you look at the league now, only maybe Woodlands at the time when it was still around is affiliated to the area. Tanjong Pagar, as in Tanjong Pagar GRC, although they play at Queenstown. Balestier, okay, they are kind of like across the PIE in Toa Payoh, but the Balestier region is there. It's all right, not too far. Tampines is in Tampines, it's all right. Geylang, I don't know, it's still a little far from Lorong 12 in Bedok. So, maybe how about, I don't know, Bedok United or Bedok International? That'd be nice. But let's not, we need to fit in Geylang's name there as well in some way. Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of people agree with, the names that you have thrown out, and also a lot of people have agreed with the earlier notion of having the competition whereby we invite. Yeah, that's what Tom just told me, that he should be the CEO of the S.League. So drop by to drop the ASEAN Super League and promote his page and help him become the CEO of S.League. Okay, let's go back to the national team. I think we digressed too far. Okay, going back to the national team again. Now, earlier on, you mentioned that you would choose Lee Lim Sing as your national team coach. Now, moving forward, looking at the team, right now it's quite a good mix of youth and experienced players. The distinctive thing about Bernd Stenger when he came into the team back then, he actually went for the idea of removing all the experienced players and going for young players, because he believed in a system whereby you could play short passes and fast passing and have fast players in the team. And I think that's it was a good thing at that time, because you see players like Adam Swandi who probably will take a long time to get into the national setup if the system is as it is right now. But Bernd Stenger came in and he kind of revolutionized the whole idea of how the national team should be picked and set up. And you mentioned Lee Lim Sing, who I think was quite okay with playing young players back during his time at Home United. Now, looking at the coach that you have picked and the system that you have in mind now, would you make a very radical change like Bernd Stenger and go for a team of young players, be it whether they have experience or they don't have experience, and make them fit into your style of play? Short passes, fast passing, nice football, nice to watch, exciting. Or would you go for the safe option like what Sundram is doing right now? Of course, you mentioned earlier that let's not always say Sundram is going to be the coach forever, but it is the way that we're playing right now. It's a fact that Sundram is going for the safe option. That's why you see names like Bennett, Mustafik in there. And a lot of listeners do not agree. They are asking the same questions. Why are these players still in the team? So, Tom, I want to hear your thoughts. What do you think would be your way of setting up the national team? Would it be the Stenger way, whereby we have young players, or would it be the safe way? Or maybe there's a third way called the Tom way, which you would deploy your players. What kind of players would you pick?
I'll go for Tom way. Basically, players should be picked on merit. You have an S.League. You assess the players week by week. Not to the extent of what Stenger did on a Monday training for selected national players. That was rubbish. Nobody does that in the world. Maybe Singapore is too small, so he thought, okay, I can do that and justify getting a big pay packet. But I would actually do it on merit, judge them on a week-to-week basis, how they perform, and then pick them based on that. And not me, I mean the coach. Yeah, if it's like Lim Lei Sing, yeah, he should be given that prerogative, and not somebody else to direct him what to do. There should be no interference. He should be given the free rein into choosing who he wants. And I stress the word merit, not reputation, not skin color, not diet, not the size of the stomach. It should be purely on merit, how you perform on the field in the league.
All right, yeah, good thoughts about that. Funny comment coming in from Iswadi. If they are playing based on geographical location, Warriors should play at Pulau Tekong. Yeah, Pulau Tekong has a decent stadium, I mean, a decent field with nice stands. Okay, maybe our final closing for this show. Tom, just want to hear what are your last words you would like to share with the listeners in regard to the national team and Singapore football? Any final thoughts?
Okay, guys. You guys have been fantastic all these years. I've been a fan from '96 as well, when the league first began, and prior to that, during the M-League and the Malaysia Cup campaign for many, many years. We are important to the success of the league and Singapore football in general. So keep supporting your clubs. If there's anything that you think that you can change, write into the FAS, write into our page, write into Aaron's page, wherever you can, put forward a suggestion, do it. The people in Jalan Besar, they are hopeless, seriously. They are a bunch of clowns. Most of you will agree. Give me a hell yeah if you think it's right. Yeah, they are not proactive in trying to change things. It's in our hands. We have to do it. So do it. Don't be afraid. Don't be shy. If you think that you can change something with a suggestion, and remember, I always believe no suggestion is bad. Every suggestion leads to something good. It may not be purely accepted immediately, but one day, it might be accepted. Like, the suggestions I gave you about the League Cup and the Singapore Cup. Yeah, most of you like it. It was just an impromptu suggestion that came to my mind. I never had a pre-thought about it, but we need people out there to think how you can change things. And if there's a different way they can support your club, do it. It's vital that the S.League carries on. All these rumors about it shutting down is very depressing. When the league was formed, it was formed to support the national team. We did that for many years, till there was a change in presidents. I think Zainuddin, again, he messed up a lot of things. And I'm sure Cheong will be very, very happy with my comment. We need people to come forward and show your passion, show your love for the game. And the best way to do it is on any weekday night, when the league is on, 7:30, go to your stadiums, your home ground, support it. And also, there's been a lot of negative publicity of late, where, the incident at the Safsa and the Yishun Sentec Mariners game, there was a bit of a scuffle, brawl. Let's not dwell too much into that. Let's move on. It was an isolated case probably. Yes, I do not condone what happened. There should never be such an incident on the field. Already, parents are like wondering what future is there for their kids when they have 10-month contracts. And when they see videos of that incident, it just adds on to their notion that football is for hooligans. We need to change that. If you have kids who are playing football, encourage them. And that's the only way that the league and the national team can grow. My final point, any national team needs a good league. And we had a good league. We had the S.League, which was doing well, which brought us our AFF competition titles so far. We never won anything before the S.League, except the Kampong Cup across the causeway. Internationally, we were shit. Now we are shit again, because the S.League is down the drain, and we need to wake it up. We need to revive, we need to resuscitate. If you know CPR, do it. Okay, that's about it. Thank you guys. Thank you for listening tonight. And we hope to see you again.
Okay, some nice words coming from Tom over there. Tom, just want to give you some feedback. There's been a resounding hell yeah coming from, I think, maybe 30 or 40 comments, repeated again and again. And in between the hell yes are hashtag Sundram out. So, well, the amount of hashtag Sundram out, the amount of hashtag hell yeah are about the same. Quite a big number over there. Anyway, to tell you guys a bit more about Tom's page, it's called Drop the ASEAN Super League. I think, Tom, you started this page about 2 years ago with the sole idea of getting FAS to drop this silly idea of having the ASEAN Super League. And, well, thankfully right now it's dead in the water. It's not happening anymore. But having said that, even though the project is dead in the water, Tom is still quite active on social media. He's still posting to the page every now and then. Yes, Tom has 35 other admins helping him as well. So sometimes the person replying you might not be Tom, but do support his page. Drop by his page, have a look at his articles. He does share quite a lot of articles. And I think after today's session, a lot of you, I can see you guys do agree with his views. So I think you will enjoy the content that he puts up. I think soon I'll get Tom back on the show again, maybe towards the preseason, and then we can talk about what's going to happen next season. Yeah, Tom is available tomorrow. Yeah, so the next podcast that I'm going to do is actually after the final round of S-League matches and before the Singapore Cup. I know a lot of you, even right now in the comments, you're saying that you want to boycott the Singapore Cup, but I think, well, let's just give the Singapore Cup a chance. Tom has something to say.
Yeah, guys, the Singapore Cup is an important cup. At this moment, you've got a Filipino team against a Japanese team, but let's look at the Japanese team as a local team. They are representing the S-League. They carry the S-League badge on their shirts. So let's go out there and support them. Don't boycott that game. Don't give the FAS a reason to drop this S-League. We need to show them that, yes, we are behind the S-League. Doesn't matter who plays. Go out there, enjoy the game, bring your girlfriend, bring your wife, bring your husband, bring your boyfriend, anybody, bring your pet dog. If the security lets you in, do it. Just go in, just enjoy the game. Do not boycott it. Okay? There is no place for boycott in football.
Great views coming from Tom. Yeah, so I echo his views. I think we shouldn't boycott it. I mean, granted, it's not a Singaporean team playing, but Albirex, I think, have been here long enough. Albirex employs enough Singaporean staff to qualify themselves as a Singaporean team. They've done so much community work with Yuhua. If I had my way, I would just call them Yuhua United or whatever. But, well, let's look at them as a Singapore team. Like Tom said, support them. And what, Jurong? Albirex Jurong. Yeah, that's a nice name. Albirex Jurong FC. Well, let's look towards the future. Hopefully that happens. I think that's about all the time we have today. So in the next podcast, it's going to come to you. Hopefully we'll do another live one. I think probably from now onwards, all our podcasts are live, because it seems like quite a lot of you enjoy listening in to us and giving us your comments. We enjoy your comments. A lot of them, because of certain reasons, I can't read out what you're writing over here because of certain words being used, but they are golden. Sorry? Okay. If you love Tom, please give another hashtag hell yeah in the comments. I'm gonna get Tom back on the show soon enough lah. And we'll see you again next time after the final round. Okay, in case you guys are still in International Week mode, actually International Week is over. Yesterday we played the last international game for the year against Bahrain, and the next round of games that we're gonna be watching is this weekend, where the final round of S-League matches are gonna be happening. Well, personally for myself, I think the only matches of interest to me are the ones that determine the 4th and 5th placing. Interested to see if Geylang finishes 4th, which they are currently holding, the position they're holding, or whether Warriors can actually pip them to 4th. Those are the only 2 positions right now that are still open. All the rest of the other positions have already been set in stone. Albirex have been crowned champions. Tampines Rovers has finished 2nd and Home United has finished 3rd. But that doesn't mean that it's going to be a dead rubber, because I think all clubs would want to end the season on a win lah. Especially for the DPMM Greenang Lions game. Everyone is saying bottom teams, I don't want to watch them, but I think give them a chance. Just go down and support them. If you live near to Jalan Besar, just go down and watch the game since it's happening this weekend. All right, so we'll see you guys again after the final round, where we review the last round of matches, and then we're going to talk about Singapore Cup coming up in the following weekend. And very soon, we're also going to have the S-League Awards night. Once I get hold of the list of nominees, I'm going to post it up on the page. Give us your comments whether you think the nominees are deserving or you think there could be better names, and we'll talk about that in a future episode of the podcast. All right, thanks guys for joining us. It's currently 11 o'clock, I think. It's good that all of you are still online and not asleep. Hopefully you didn't fall asleep listening to us today.